The morning sun cast long shadows across the United Nations building in New York as President Jake Morrison stepped out of his armored vehicle. He had been called to an emergency session, but nothing could have prepared him for what waited inside the secure briefing room. Admiral Kekstul's image flickered on the massive wall screen, his reptilian features twisted into what humans could only assume was contempt. The alien's voice came through the translators with mechanical precision, each word carefully chosen to inspire fear. "People of Earth," the hegemony commander began, his yellow eyes gleaming with ancient authority. "You have violated the sacred laws that govern civilized space. Your expansion beyond your home system ends now. Your refusal to pay proper tribute to your betters ends now. Your foolish independence ends now." President Morrison watched in silence as footage played showing barren worlds that had once teemed with life. Cities turned to glass. Oceans boiled away. Entire civilizations reduced to cosmic dust. You have 72 hours to withdraw all human presence from the outer colonies. You will submit to hegemony rule and accept your place as a tributary species. Refuse, and your world will join the museum of extinct civilizations that thought themselves too proud to kneel. The transmission ended, leaving the room in heavy silence. Morrison looked around the table at the faces of Earth's most powerful leaders. Secretary General Maria Santos sat pale-faced beside him. Defense Secretary Lisa Blake was already typing rapidly on her tablet, no doubt calling emergency meetings. "How many ships do they have?" Morrison asked quietly. General Ryan Murphy cleared his throat. "Our long-range sensors detected the buildup 3 days ago. 847 vessels, Mr. President, the largest fleet ever assembled by any known alien species." The number hit the room like a physical blow. Earth's entire defensive fleet consisted of 12 orbital platforms and maybe 30 patrol ships scattered across the colonies. They were so outnumbered it was almost laughable. "What about our allies?" asked Secretary Santos. Admiral Kate Sullivan shook her head grimly. "The Centauri Federation is staying neutral. The Vegan Republic won't even take our calls. Everyone's too scared of the hegemony to help us." Morrison stood and walked to the window overlooking the bustling city below. Millions of people went about their daily lives, unaware that their entire civilization hung by a thread. Children played in parks. Couples walked hand in hand. Street vendors sold hot dogs and coffee to office workers rushing to meetings. "Sir?" Lisa Blake spoke up hesitantly. "There might be something else we can try." All eyes turned to her. She looked uncomfortable, as if she was about to reveal a family secret. "There's a project that's been running for the past 5 years. Top secret, black budget, need-to-know basis only. Even I only learned about it last month when the hegemony threat became real." Morrison turned from the window. "What kind of project?" "They call it Project Sentinel. Dr. Alex Turner has been leading a team working on some kind of advanced defensive system. I don't understand all the science, but they claim it can protect Earth from any invasion fleet." General Murphy frowned. "I've never heard of any Project Sentinel, and I oversee all military research." "That's because it's not technically military," Blake explained. "It's been disguised as a civilian space research program. The satellites they've been launching for the past 5 years, the ones everyone thinks are for weather monitoring and communications, they're something else entirely." The room fell silent again as everyone processed this information. A secret weapon that might save Earth, hidden in plain sight for 5 years. "Where's Dr. Turner now?" Morrison asked. "Luna Base 7. The hidden facility on the far side of the moon." Morrison made his decision quickly. "Get him on a secure line now." 20 minutes later, Dr. Alex Turner's face appeared on the screen. He was a thin man with tired eyes and graying hair, but there was something in his expression that gave Morrison hope. Confidence, maybe even excitement. "Mr. President," Turner said, "I've been expecting this call, Doctor. I need to know if your project can stop 847 enemy warships." Turner was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Mr. President, Project Sentinel wasn't designed to stop an invasion fleet. It was designed to end one. Permanently." Over the next hour, Turner explained his work in terms simple enough for the politicians to understand. For 5 years, his team had been placing special satellites throughout the solar system. To outside observers, they looked like ordinary equipment. Weather stations, communication relays, scientific instruments. In reality, they were nodes in a massive network based on quantum physics and gravitational manipulation. Turner's breakthrough had come from studying alien technology recovered from previous encounters with hegemony scouts. Humanity had learned to turn the aliens' own advanced science against them. The beauty of the system, Turner explained, is that it uses the enemy's own energy against them. The more powerful their weapons, the more devastating the response. A fleet of 800 ships would generate enough energy to... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Well, let's just say it would be quite spectacular. Morrison felt a cold chill run down his spine. Doctor, are you telling me you've built a weapon that could destroy an entire fleet? I'm telling you I've built a defense system that will make sure no one ever threatens Earth again. The meeting continued for another 2 hours as Turner's team provided technical details, and Blake coordinated with military commanders. Plans were made, codes were distributed, and fail-safes were put in place. As the sun set over New York, President Morrison prepared for the most important speech of his career. In a few hours, he would address the world and tell them that Earth would not surrender to alien tyranny. He would not mention Project Sentinel or give the enemy any hint of what was coming. Instead, he would do what humans had always done when faced with impossible odds. He would stand tall, look the universe in the eye, and dare it to do its worst. On the far side of the moon, Dr. Turner and his team worked through the night, making final preparations. Maria Gonzalez checked satellite positions while Dr. Ben Carter ran calculations on quantum field generators. Everything had to be perfect. The hegemony had made a mistake. They thought Earth was just another primitive world that would crumble at the first show of force. They had no idea that humanity's greatest strength had always been turning disadvantages into advantages, weaknesses into weapons. In 70 hours, they would learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. Admiral Kexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, and watched as the largest fleet in hegemony history assembled around him. 847 warships stretched across space in perfect formation, each one a masterpiece of alien engineering and firepower. The sight filled him with deep satisfaction. In his 300 years of service to the hegemony, he had conquered 47 worlds and brought 53 species under hegemony rule. But never had he commanded such overwhelming force. Status report, he commanded, his voice echoing through the massive bridge. Commander Veltar approached, his scaled hands holding a data tablet. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, Admiral. The dreadnoughts are at full power and the planet-killer weapons have been charged and tested. Kexthal nodded approvingly. The humans would see this fleet and immediately understand their position. No species had ever resisted when faced with such obvious superiority. Most surrendered before the first shot was fired. Admiral, Veltar said hesitantly, I've been reviewing the intelligence reports on these humans. They have some unusual characteristics that might warrant caution. Kexthal's yellow eyes fixed on his second-in-command. Speak. They learn quickly, sir. Very quickly. In just 50 years, they went from using primitive chemical rockets to building faster-than-light ships. Their technology advancement rate is unlike anything we've seen. And what of it? Kexthal waved dismissively. They still use simple fusion power and basic energy shields. Their weapons are centuries behind ours. What can 50 years of development do against 3,000 years of hegemony superiority? Veltar shifted uncomfortably. They also show unusual tactical creativity. The battle reports from our scout encounters describe unconventional strategies. They use tactics that don't appear in any military database. Commander, Kexthal said with dangerous quiet, are you suggesting that 847 of our finest warships cannot handle a few dozen primitive human vessels? No, sir. I simply think we should be prepared for surprises. Kexthal turned to look out at his fleet again. Each ship was a monument to hegemony power. The smallest destroyer could level a city. The largest dreadnoughts could crack a planet's crust. Together they represented enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. The only surprise will be how quickly they surrender, he said finally. On Earth, the evacuation of the outer colonies had begun. Colonel Steve Parker coordinated the massive operation from his command center in Colorado. Thousands of civilian ships raced between the colonies and Earth, carrying families and essential personnel to safety. How many are we leaving behind? Parker asked his aide. Approximately 50,000 volunteers across all colonies, sir. Essential personnel, defense forces, and people who refuse to abandon their homes. Parker nodded grimly. He understood the choice. Some people would rather die fighting for their homes than live as refugees. He just hoped Dr. Turner's miracle weapon would make sure they didn't have to. On Luna Base 7, hidden beneath the moon's surface, Turner's team worked around the clock. The facility was a marvel of human engineering, built in secret over 5 years and disguised as a simple research station. Maria Gonzalez monitored the quantum field generators that would power the Sentinel network. Field coherence is stable at 98%, she reported. All satellites are responding to test signals. Dr. Ben Carter looked up from his calculations. The gravitational manipulation equations check out, but I'm still worried about cascade effects. If we miscalculate the field strength, we could damage our own ships. Turner wiped sweat from his forehead. That's why we're using progressive activation. The field will start small and build gradually. Any human ships in the area will have time to retreat to safe distance. The project was based on a breakthrough Turner had made 3 years ago while studying captured hegemony technology. He had discovered that alien energy weapons worked by creating temporary tiers in space-time, then channeling energy through those tiers. What the aliens didn't know was that humans had learned to create their own tiers. More than that, they had learned to connect them using quantum entanglement. The Sentinel satellites could create a network of space-time distortions throughout the entire solar system. When enemy ships fired their weapons, the energy would be caught by these distortions and redirected. Instead of destroying human targets, the aliens' own firepower would be turned back on them with interest. It's elegant, really, Turner had explained to his team months ago. They think they're fighting us, but they're actually fighting themselves. The more powerful their weapons, the more certain their defeat. Captain Amy Roberts stood on the bridge of Defense Platform Alpha, Earth's primary orbital defense station. Through the viewport, she could see the planet turning slowly below, beautiful and blue and completely unaware of what was coming. Her crew of 30 volunteers had stayed behind to maintain the illusion that Earth's defenses were conventional. When the hegemony fleet arrived, they would see exactly what they expected to see: a few primitive human weapons trying desperately to protect their world. "Captain," her weapons officer called out, "long-range sensors are detecting hyperspace distortions. Multiple contacts heading this way." Roberts felt her heart skip a beat. "How many?" "Too many to count, ma'am. The computer estimates over 800 ships." She activated the comm system. "All stations, this is Captain Roberts. Enemy fleet approaching. Prepare for engagement. Remember, we just need to make it look good until Dr. Turner can work his magic." In the depths of space, Admiral Kexthul gave the order that would change everything. "All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. Destination, Earth system. Time to departure, 1 hour." 847 engines began charging their hyperspace drives. In weapon bays across the fleet, planet killer devices hummed to life. Soldiers checked their equipment and prepared for what they expected to be a very short war. Kexthul reviewed the battle plan one more time. The fleet would emerge at the edge of human space and advance in formation toward Earth. The humans would see them coming and have time to appreciate their hopelessness. Then, when the psychological impact was complete, he would give them one final chance to surrender. When they refused, and they would refuse, humans were too proud for their own good, he would demonstrate hegemony power. A few of the smaller ships would be destroyed to show the humans what their weapons could do. Then surely even the stubborn humans would see reason. "Sir," Veltar reported, "all ships ready for jump." "Excellent." Kexthul settled into his command chair. "Begin countdown sequence." On Earth, President Morrison finished reviewing his speech one more time. In a few hours, when the enemy fleet appeared, he would address the world and announce that humanity would not surrender. He would not mention the secret weapon, or give the aliens any hint that Earth might have defenses they didn't know about. The speech was simple and direct. Earth would stand, Earth would fight, and somehow, against impossible odds, Earth would survive. He just hoped Dr. Turner was as brilliant as everyone claimed he was. Space itself seemed to tear apart as 847 hegemony warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The massive fleet materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with deadly purpose under the distant light of Earth's sun. Admiral Kexthul stood on his bridge and smiled with satisfaction. The formation was exactly as he had planned it. The enormous dreadnoughts formed the center, their planet-killing weapons visible even from this distance. Smaller battleships and cruisers created wings on either side, while destroyers and frigates filled the gaps between. It was a sight designed to break the spirit of any enemy before the fighting even began. "Magnificent," he breathed. "Signal all ships to begin the advance, slow and steady. I want the humans to have plenty of time to appreciate what they're facing." On Earth, every major city fell silent as news broadcasts showed the first images of the enemy fleet. The pictures came from long-range telescopes and deep space monitoring stations, but they were clear enough to show the true scale of what humanity faced. President Morrison sat in the Situation Room deep beneath the White House, watching the reports with his senior staff. The numbers were overwhelming. 847 ships, some of them larger than Earth's biggest cities. The enemy fleet had enough firepower to destroy every planet in the solar system twice over. "Sir," Defense Secretary Lisa Blake said quietly, "we're getting panic reports from every major population center. People are trying to flee the cities, but there's nowhere to go." Morrison nodded grimly. He had expected this. No one could look at those images and not feel afraid, but fear could also make people strong, and humanity had survived worse odds before. "Any word from Dr. Turner?" "He reports all systems ready. The Sentinel network is fully operational and waiting for activation codes." On Luna Base 7, Turner stood before a wall of monitors showing satellite positions throughout the solar system. Each green dot represented one of his hidden weapons, disguised as ordinary space equipment. Weather stations near Jupiter, communication relays around Mars, scientific instruments scattered through the asteroid belt, all connected by quantum entanglement fields invisible to enemy sensors. "Status report," he called out. Maria Gonzalez looked up from her console, all satellites responding normally. "Quantum field generators are charged and stable. We're ready for activation on your command." Dr. Ben Carter frowned at his calculations. "Alex, I'm still concerned about the power levels. If we miscalculate the cascade effect, the energy release could be visible from outside the solar system. Every alien species in the galaxy will know what we've done." "Good," Turner replied firmly. "Let them know. Let them all know that Earth is not defenseless." The enemy fleet continued its slow advance toward Earth, maintaining perfect formation. Admiral Kexthul had planned every detail to maximize psychological impact. The humans would watch their doom approaching for hours, giving them plenty of time to reconsider their foolish decision to resist. Commander Veltar studied the tactical displays, showing human defensive positions. "Admiral, their orbital platforms are powering up weapon systems. They appear to be preparing for battle." Kexthul laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. 12 platforms against 800 ships? Even humans cannot be that stupid. They must be trying to show courage before they surrender. On Defense Platform Alpha, Captain Amy Roberts watched the enemy fleet grow larger on her screens. Her job was to make Earth's defenses look as conventional and primitive as possible. The aliens had to believe they were facing nothing more than basic human weapons. "All platforms maintain standard combat positions," she broadcast. "Charge weapons to full power and prepare for engagement. Make it look good, people. The whole world is watching." Her crew worked with practiced efficiency, bringing the platform's fusion cannons and missile systems online. They all knew these weapons were useless against such overwhelming force, but they would play their roles anyway. Earth needed to look like it was fighting with everything it had. Back on the Hegemony flagship, Admiral Kexthul decided it was time to deliver his final ultimatum. The psychological moment was perfect. The humans could see his fleet clearly now, could count his ships and calculate their hopelessness. "Open a channel to Earth," he commanded. President Morrison's face appeared on the main screen, flanked by the flags of Earth's nations. The human leader looked calm and determined, showing no sign of fear despite the overwhelming force bearing down on his world. "People of Earth," Kexthul began, his voice carrying the authority of 3,000 years of hegemony dominance. "You see before you the largest fleet ever assembled. 847 ships of the line, each one capable of destroying your entire civilization." Morrison's expression didn't change. "I see ships full of bullies who think might makes right." Kexthul's eyes narrowed. He had expected fear, pleading, perhaps an attempt to negotiate. Instead, this primitive human was showing defiance. "Your orbital platforms are toys," he continued. "Your weapons are obsolete. Your ships are insignificant. Surrender now, and your species will live as servants of the hegemony. Refuse, and your world will burn." Morrison leaned forward slightly. "Admiral, Let me explain something about humans. We don't kneel to bullies, we don't surrender to tyrants, and we sure as hell don't back down from a fight no matter how bad the odds look. Then you choose extinction. I choose freedom. The transmission ended, leaving Kexathul staring at a blank screen. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever maintained such defiance in the face of certain death. The humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Admiral, Veltar said carefully. Their response was unusually confident. Perhaps we should scan for hidden defenses or unknown weapons. What could they possibly have that we haven't already detected? Kexthul waved dismissively. Our sensors show exactly what we expected. A few platforms, some patrol ships, primitive fusion weapons. There are no surprises here, Commander. On Earth, the final preparations were complete. Dr. Turner's team had run through every system check twice. The satellites were in position, the quantum fields were stable, and the activation codes were ready. Colonel Steve Parker coordinated the last evacuation flights from the outer colonies while monitoring the enemy fleet's approach. 30 minutes until they reach weapons range, he reported to President Morrison. Morrison stood and straightened his tie. In a few minutes, he would address the world one final time before the battle began. He had thought carefully about what to say to people who were about to watch their entire species fight for survival. Mr. President, Lisa Blake said quietly, are you sure about this? Dr. Turner's weapon is completely untested against a real enemy fleet. We're betting everything on technology we don't fully understand. Morrison looked at her with steady eyes. Lisa, I've read Turner's reports. I've seen his calculations. More than that, I believe in human ingenuity. We've always found a way to turn our disadvantages into advantages. This time won't be different. The enemy fleet continued its inexorable advance, growing larger and more terrifying with each passing minute. On ships throughout the formation, weapon systems charged to full power. Planet-killing devices hummed with barely contained energy. Soldiers prepared for what they expected to be humanity's final hour. Admiral Kexathul stood before his tactical display and gave the order that would begin the battle. All ships assume attack formation. Prepare to engage human defenses on my command. 847 warships adjusted their positions and armed their weapons. In a few minutes, they would begin the systematic destruction of everything humans had built among the stars. They had no idea they were about to provide the power for their own annihilation. The moment of truth arrived with deceptive calm. Admiral Kexthul looked out at Earth hanging in the darkness ahead, a blue marble that would soon learn the price of defying the hegemony. His fleet had moved into perfect attack formation, 847 ships ready to deliver overwhelming firepower. All ships report ready. Admiral, Commander Veltar announced from his position at the tactical console. Kexthul nodded slowly. The psychological phase was complete. The humans had seen his fleet, received his ultimatum, and chosen death over surrender. Now it was time to demonstrate why no species in the galaxy dared to resist hegemony rule. Begin the attack, he commanded. Target their orbital platforms first. I want the humans to watch their defenses crumble before we touch their precious planet. Across the massive fleet, weapon systems came alive. Energy cannons charged to full power. Missile tubes loaded planet-killer warheads. Beam weapons that could slice through moon-sized asteroids focused on their targets. The first salvo erupted from the hegemony fleet in a display of raw destruction that lit up space itself. Thousands of energy beams lanced toward Earth's orbital platforms, while massive explosions bloomed where missiles detonated against human shields. On Defense Platform Alpha, Captain Amy Roberts watched the incoming fire with professional calm. All hands brace for impact. Remember, we just need to look like we're fighting. The platform shook as enemy weapons struck its shields, but the damage was carefully controlled. Roberts had positioned her defenses to create maximum visual impact while keeping her crew safe. To outside observers, it looked like humanity's best defenses were being overwhelmed in the opening seconds of battle. In the Situation Room beneath the White House, President Morrison watched the battle displays with steady eyes. Dr. Turner, are you ready? On Luna Base 7, Turner stood before his control console with his finger hovering over the activation key. Around him, his team monitored quantum field generators and satellite networks that had taken 5 years to build and position throughout the solar system. Mr. President, Turner said quietly, Project Sentinel is ready for activation. Once I start this sequence, there will be no stopping it. Morrison took a deep breath. In the next few minutes, humanity would either achieve its greatest victory or face complete annihilation. There was no middle ground. "Do it," he said simply. "Protect our home." Turner pressed the activation key. For the first few seconds, nothing visible happened. Deep in space, seemingly harmless satellites began generating quantum fields invisible to conventional sensors. Weather monitoring stations near Jupiter started creating microscopic gravitational distortions. Communication relays around Mars began connecting to each other through quantum entanglement channels that operated faster than light itself. The hegemony fleet continued its devastating barrage, unaware that every shot fired was being carefully tracked and analyzed by Turner's network. Energy signatures were cataloged, weapon frequencies were recorded, and power levels were calculated with inhuman precision. 10 seconds since activation, Maria Gonzalez reported from her console. All satellites responding normally. Quantum field coherence at maximum. On the Hegemony flagship, weapon control officers reported successful strikes against human targets. Admiral Kexthul watched with satisfaction as Earth's orbital platforms flickered under his fleet's overwhelming firepower. "Excellent," he said to Commander Veltar. "Their defenses are crumbling exactly as predicted. Begin targeting their industrial satellites and space stations." The second wave of attacks launched from the alien fleet, even more devastating than the first. But now something strange began to happen. Deep space monitoring stations throughout the solar system registered energy spikes that didn't match any known technology. "Admiral," the Hegemony science officer called out nervously, "I'm detecting unusual quantum fluctuations throughout this system. They don't match anything in our databases." Kexthul barely glanced at the readings. "Electronic warfare attempts. The humans are desperate enough to try anything now. Ignore it and continue firing." But the fluctuations were growing stronger. By the 20-second mark, Turner's satellite network had created a web of quantum entanglement fields that connected every piece of matter in the Sol system. Each Hegemony ship was now surrounded by invisible gravitational distortions that began affecting their navigation systems. "Admiral," Veltar reported with growing concern, "multiple ships are reporting minor power fluctuations and navigation errors. The targeting systems on the outer destroyers are showing drift." "Impossible," Kexthul snapped. "Our technology is immune to primitive human jamming." But it wasn't jamming. Dr. Turner had discovered something the Hegemony had never imagined, a way to use their own advanced technology against them. Every energy blast fired by the alien fleet was being caught in quantum loops and redirected through the gravitational field network. 30 seconds, Ben Carter announced from Luna Base 7. "The cascade effect is beginning. Energy accumulation is approaching critical mass." Turner watched his displays with fierce concentration. His calculations had predicted this moment, but seeing it happen in reality was both terrifying and magnificent. The enemy fleet had no idea they were powering their own destruction with every shot they fired. On the Eternal Dominance, warning alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The massive dreadnought's power core was showing impossible readings as energy that should have been dissipated in weapon fire somehow returned to overload the ship's systems. "Report," Kexthul demanded. "Admiral, our power core is experiencing massive fluctuations. It's as if the energy from our own weapons is being fed back into our systems somehow." Veltar stared at his tactical display in growing horror. Similar reports were coming in from ships throughout the fleet. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, even the mighty dreadnoughts, all showing the same impossible energy feedback. "Sir, I recommend immediate ceasefire until we can understand what's happening." But it was already too late. At the 35-second mark, Turner's quantum field network reached critical mass. Every joule of energy the Hegemony fleet had fired was now trapped in gravitational loops throughout the solar system, building pressure like water behind a dam. "This is it," Turner announced to his team. "Field reversal in 3 Chi 2-1. The quantum fields reversed polarity in perfect synchronization across billions of cubic kilometers of space. All the accumulated energy from 847 warships suddenly had nowhere to go except back to its source, Admiral." Kexthul had one moment of terrible understanding as his ship's power readings went off the scale. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had turned the Hegemony's own overwhelming firepower into the instrument of their destruction. "How?" he whispered. At the 47-second mark, every Hegemony vessel simultaneously experienced catastrophic power core failure. The energy they had fired at Earth came rushing back, magnified 100-fold by quantum field manipulation. Ship after ship exploded in brilliant flashes that lit up the entire solar system. The mighty Eternal Dominance, flagship of the hegemony's greatest fleet, was torn apart by the power of its own planet-killing weapons. Smaller ships simply vaporized instantly, their hulls unable to contain the massive energy overload. In 47 seconds, 847 warships became 847 expanding clouds of debris and plasma. The largest invasion fleet in galactic history had been destroyed without a single human weapon firing a shot. On Earth, every person who had been watching the battle through telescopes and news broadcasts saw the same impossible sight, a wall of explosions stretching across space as their enemies destroyed themselves. President Morrison stood in stunned silence for a moment, then turned to Dr. Turner's image on the screen. "Doctor, did we just win?" Turner smiled wearily. "Mr. President, we just changed the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The 47 seconds that had seemed like an eternity were over. Earth was safe, humanity was free, and the universe had learned a new lesson about underestimating human ingenuity." 3 months had passed since the 47 seconds that changed everything. The debris field from Admiral Kexthul's fleet still drifted at the edge of the Sol system, a graveyard of twisted metal that served as humanity's first monument to galactic power. President Jake Morrison stood before the joint session of the world government, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth. Behind him, massive screens showed live images from the debris field where human salvage crews worked around the clock, recovering alien technology that would advance Earth's capabilities by centuries. "My fellow humans," Morrison began, "3 months ago, we faced extinction. Today we stand as one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, but with that power comes responsibility." The chamber was silent as he continued. "We have learned that there are dozens of species throughout the galaxy who have lived under hegemony oppression for thousands of years. Entire civilizations reduced to slavery because they believed resistance was impossible. They were wrong. Resistance is not only possible, it's necessary." On the hegemony homeworld of Zephyr Prime, the High Council met in emergency session for the 3rd time that week. The Great Chamber, once filled with the confident voices of galactic rulers, now echoed with fear and uncertainty. Supreme Chancellor Vexkar looked around the table at his fellow council members, seeing the same haunted expression in every reptilian face. The destruction of Kexthul's fleet had shattered more than ships. It had shattered the foundation of hegemony power. "Report from Admiral Veltar," he commanded. The new admiral, promoted after surviving the disaster at Earth, stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "Chancellor, I have completed my analysis of the sensor data from the battle. The humans possess technology that can manipulate quantum fields and gravitational forces on a system-wide scale. Our weapons are not only useless against them, they actually make us weaker." The council chamber erupted in alarmed voices. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had ruled through superior firepower. The idea that their weapons could be turned against them was beyond their comprehension. "How is such technology possible?" demanded Councillor Hexter. "We don't know," Veltar admitted. "Our best scientists have studied the data for months. The humans seem to have developed quantum manipulation techniques that our civilization never imagined. They turned our own energy against us using principles we still don't understand." Chancellor Vexkar stood slowly, his ancient body showing the weight of recent events. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" "Immediate peace negotiations. We cannot fight an enemy who grows stronger every time we attack them. The humans have already demonstrated they can destroy our largest fleets. If we continue this conflict, they will destroy our entire civilization." On Earth, Dr. Alex Turner had become the most famous scientist in human history. His face appeared on magazine covers and news broadcasts around the world. Universities offered him honorary degrees, and governments competed to fund his research. But Turner remained focused on his work at Luna Base 7, now expanded into a massive research complex where teams of scientists from around the world studied recovered alien technology and developed even more advanced defensive systems. "The beauty of quantum entanglement," he explained to Maria Gonzalez as they walked through the new laboratories, "is that it scales infinitely. The Sentinel network around Earth was just the beginning. We can create similar networks around every human colony, every allied world, Every planet that chooses freedom over tyranny. Maria nodded, still amazed by how much had changed. The Centauri Federation has formally requested alliance with Earth. So have the Vegan Republic and the Andromedan Free States. Everyone wants protection from the hegemony. And they'll have it, Turner replied firmly. But they'll also have something more important. The knowledge that oppression can be defeated. We're not just sharing our technology with them, we're sharing our spirit. Colonel Steve Parker had been promoted to general and now commanded Earth's rapidly expanding space defense force. The outer colonies that had been evacuated during the crisis were being rebuilt as fortified bases, each one protected by its own sentinel network. Sir, his aide reported, we have 47 alien species requesting formal alliance with Earth. They're all former hegemony tributaries who want protection and assistance in establishing independent governments. Parker smiled. Approve them all. And make sure each new ally receives a full sentinel defense network. No species should have to choose between freedom and survival ever again. Captain Amy Roberts now commanded the flagship of Earth's new fleet, the UES Defiance. The ship had been built using recovered alien technology, combined with human innovation, creating vessels that were faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain, her communications officer announced, we're receiving a priority transmission from an unknown vessel approaching the Sol system. On screen, the image that appeared showed a familiar reptilian face, Admiral Veltar of the Hegemony Fleet, but now he looked older, more tired and completely without the arrogance that had once defined his species. I am Admiral Veltar of the Hegemony, he said formally. I request permission to approach Earth under a flag of truce. I carry terms of surrender from the High Council. Roberts looked at the alien commander with steady eyes. Permission granted, Admiral. Proceed to Earth orbit and prepare to be escorted to the surface. President Morrison received Admiral Veltar in the same room where he had first learned of the hegemony threat. But now the balance of power was completely reversed. The alien admiral sat across from him not as a conqueror, but as a defeated enemy seeking mercy. President Morrison, Veltar began carefully, the Hegemony High Council has authorized me to offer complete surrender. We will withdraw from all occupied systems, release all tributary species, and submit to any terms you deem appropriate. Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying the alien commander. Admiral, 3 months ago your people threatened to destroy my entire species. Now you want to surrender. What changed your minds? Reality, Mr. President. We finally understand that humans don't fight wars the way other species do. You don't just defeat your enemies. You turn them into allies. Half of our former tributary species have joined your alliance. The other half are requesting protection from Earth. Our empire is crumbling from within. Morrison nodded slowly. The hegemony is finished as a galactic power. But that doesn't mean your species has to be destroyed. We're not interested in conquest, Admiral. We're interested in freedom. He stood and walked to the window overlooking the bustling city below. Here are my terms. The hegemony will release all tributary species and provide reparations to help them rebuild. Your military will be reduced to defensive forces only, and you will join the Galactic Alliance of Free Worlds as an equal member, not a ruler. Veltar bowed his head in acceptance. The High Council will agree to these terms. There's one more thing, Morrison added. We want full access to your historical records and scientific databases. Not for conquest, but for understanding. Humanity needs to learn about the galaxy we're now part of. 6 months after the 47 seconds that changed everything, President Morrison stood on the observation deck of Luna Base 7, looking out at the transformed solar system. Construction ships from dozens of allied species worked alongside human crews, building new stations and defensive platforms. Dr. Turner joined him at the viewport, both men watching as humanity's new responsibilities took shape in space around them. Any regrets? Turner asked quietly. Morrison shook his head. We did what we had to do. The question is, what do we do now? We have more power than any species in galactic history. How do we make sure we use it wisely? Turner pointed to the construction work visible outside. We do what humans have always done best. We build something better than what came before. Not an empire based on fear, but an alliance based on choice. Not conquest, but cooperation. Morrison nodded, then smiled. 3,000 years from now, when historians write about this period, they're going to call it the day humanity saved the galaxy. Maybe, Turner replied. Or maybe they'll call it the day the galaxy learned to save itself. In the distance, a new ship was taking shape. The first vessel designed jointly by human and alien engineers, incorporating the best technology and ideas from a dozen different species. It would be the flagship of the new Galactic Alliance, a symbol of what could be accomplished when free peoples worked together. The age of the hegemony was over. The age of freedom had begun, and it had all started with 47 seconds of human ingenuity turning overwhelming force into decisive victory. Humanity had not just survived its first contact with galactic civilization, it had transformed that civilization forever, and this was only the beginning.